The stars had been silent for 40 years. 40 years since the human exploration ship, Eternal Dawn, vanished beyond the outer rim. 40 years since families stopped waiting by communication screens. 40 years since humanity accepted that their bravest explorers were never coming home. Then the silence broke. Officer Draven of the Valkyran Patrol Fleet was the first to see it. His sensors screamed with alerts as a ship emerged from a region of space where no ship should exist. The vessel was old, covered in strange markings and battle scars that told stories of places no living being had ever seen. Its design was unmistakably human. Impossible, Draven whispered. He checked his readings 3 times. The ship was broadcasting identification codes that were for decades old. Codes that belonged to a ghost. On the bridge of the Eternal Dawn, Captain Taiho stood with his hands clasped behind his back. He was older now. His hair had turned white during the long journey, and deep lines marked his face like a map of every hardship they had survived. But his eyes remained sharp and clear. Those eyes had seen things that would haunt him forever. They had also seen wonders beyond imagination. "We are being scanned," said Lieutenant Minho from his station. He was a broad man with a soldier's posture, always ready for a fight. "3 Valkyran warships are moving to intercept us." Taiho nodded slowly. He had expected this. The Valkyran Empire controlled most of the known galaxy. They called themselves the rulers of civilized space. They called humans a minor species, useful for labor and little else. Taiho had once accepted this as truth. He no longer did. "Open a channel to Earth," Taiho ordered. "Tell them we are coming home." Dr. Yuna stepped forward from her position near the science station. She was a small woman with gentle features, but there was steel in her spine. She had spent 40 years studying, translating, and understanding. The data crystal she carried in her pocket weighed almost nothing. Yet it was heavy enough to crush an empire. "Taiho," she said quietly, "if the Valkyran board this ship, they will take everything we found. Everything we suffered for will mean nothing." "They will not board this ship," Taiho replied. His voice was calm but certain. The communication screen flickered to life. A Valkyran officer appeared, his gray skin and black eyes showing clear displeasure. The Valkyran were tall beings with sharp features and an air of superiority they wore like a crown. "Human vessel, you have entered Valkyran-controlled space without authorization. You will power down your engines and prepare for inspection. Resistance will result in your destruction." Taiho did not blink. "I am Captain Taiho of the Earth vessel Eternal Dawn. We have been away for 40 years. We are returning home. We will not stop." The Valkyran officer laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "You think you have a choice? You are one ship. We are 3 warships. Your kind does not give orders. Your kind follows them." From the back of the bridge, a young voice spoke. "Captain, their weapons are charging." Taiho glanced at the speaker. Navigator Jiho was barely 20 years old. He had never seen Earth. He had been born on this ship during the long years of their journey. Raised on stories of a home he had never known, yet he had plotted their course through impossible dangers with a skill that amazed everyone. "I see them, Jiho," Taiho said gently. He turned back to the screen. "Valkyran Commander, I am going to give you one warning. Do not fire on this ship. We carry technology you do not understand. If you attack us, you will regret it." The Valkyran laughed again. "Human arrogance. Your species never learns." The screen went dark. Seconds later, the 3 Valkyran warships opened fire. Engineer Hannah was ready. She had kept this ship running for 40 years with nothing but spare parts and determination. When the ancient engines roared to life, they did not sound like human technology. They sang with a power that came from somewhere else. Somewhere older, the Valkyran weapons hit the Eternal Dawn's shields and stopped cold. The energy simply vanished, absorbed like water into sand. The Valkyran commanders stared at their screens in confusion. No human ship had shields like this. No ship in the known galaxy had shields like this. "Return fire," Taiho ordered. "Non-lethal only. Disable their systems." Minho pressed a single button. A wave of blue light pulsed from the Eternal Dawn, It washed over all three Valkyran warships at once. Their lights flickered. Their engines died. Their weapons went silent. In seconds, three of the Empire's finest warships were floating dead in space. On the lead Valkyran ship, Commander Draven could only stare as his screens went dark one by one. Emergency lighting bathed the bridge in red. Around him, his crew scrambled in panic. What was that? Someone shouted. What did they do to us? Draven had no answer. He had served the Empire for 30 years. He had crushed rebellions and destroyed enemy fleets. He had never seen anything like this. A single human ship had disabled 3 warships without killing a single person. That kind of precision, that kind of power, was not supposed to exist. The Eternal Dawn flew past them without slowing down. On the bridge of the human ship was no celebration. The crew knew this was only the beginning. The Empire would send more ships. They would send fleets. They would send everything they had to stop what was coming. Dr. Yuna touched the data crystal in her pocket. Inside was the truth. The real history of the galaxy. The crimes the Valkyran had committed to build their empire. The secrets they had buried for 10,000 years. They will try to stop us, she said. Let them try, Minho replied. His hand rested on his weapon. I have been waiting 40 years for this fight. Hannah's voice came through the intercom from the engine room. Engines holding steady, Captain? She will get us home. Taiho allowed himself a small smile. Hannah had always talked about the ship like it was alive. Maybe after all these years? It was. Young Jiho plotted their course toward Earth. His fingers moved across the navigation screen with practiced ease. He had dreamed of this moment his entire life. Seeing the planet where his parents were born, breathing air that did not come from recyclers. Standing under a sky that was not made of metal? Course set, Jiho announced. Estimated arrival, 72 hours. 72 hours. After 40 years, there were 72 hours from home. Taiho turned to his crew. These people had become his family. They had lost friends during the journey. They had buried loved ones in the cold darkness between stars. They had kept going when hope seemed foolish. Now they carried something worth more than their lives. The Empire will hear what we have done today, Taiho said. They will come for us with everything they have. But we did not survive 40 years in the unknown just to fail now. We have the truth, and the truth is stronger than any weapon they possess. Dr. Yuna held up the data crystal. It caught the light and sparkled like a tiny star. This changes everything, she said. When the galaxy learns what is on this crystal, the Valkyran Empire will fall. Every lie they told, every crime they committed, every species they destroyed, it is all here. Across the galaxy, word began to spread. The lost human ship had returned. It had faced Valkyran warships and won without taking a single life. It carried secrets that the Empire wanted buried, and it was heading home. 40 years ago, the Eternal Dawn was just another human exploration ship. It carried a crew of 53 brave souls who wanted to see what lay beyond the edges of known space. Captain Taiho was younger then, full of hope and curiosity. Dr. Yuna had just finished her studies in ancient languages. Lieutenant Minho was a fresh officer, eager to prove himself. Engineer Hannah was already the best at keeping engines running when they should have died. They flew past the outer rim, into regions where no human had ever traveled. For 3 months, everything was normal. They mapped new stars. They cataloged planets. They dreamed of the discoveries they would bring home. Then they found the rift. It appeared without warning, a tear in space itself that pulled the Eternal Dawn through before anyone could react. The ship tumbled through darkness that was not empty. Strange lights flickered around them. Sounds that should not exist in vacuum echoed through the hull. When they finally emerged, nothing looked familiar. They had arrived in a place the crew would later call the Silence. It was a graveyard, not of bodies, but of civilizations. Massive structures floated in the void, clearly built by intelligent beings but long abandoned. Ships larger than cities drifted without power. Entire space stations hung frozen in time, their lights dark for millions of years. Where are we? Minho asked, his voice barely a whisper. No one had an answer. For the first year, they focused on survival. The rift had closed behind them, and they had no idea how to return home. Hannah worked day and night to keep the engines running. Taiho kept the crew calm when despair threatened to break them. They rationed food. They recycled water. They learned to live with the knowledge that they might never see Earth again. But Dr. Yuna could not ignore what surrounded them. She was a scientist. She needed to understand. She began exploring the abandoned structures. What she found changed everything. The beings who built this place called themselves the architects. They had existed millions of years before any current species evolved. Their technology was so advanced it looked like magic. They had traveled between galaxies as easily as humans traveled between cities. They had created wonders that defied understanding, and they had kept records. Detailed records of everything they had observed. Yuna worked for years to understand their language. Hannah built translation machines from salvaged parts. Slowly, piece by piece, the truth emerged. The architects had watched the rise of countless species. They had documented the birth and death of civilizations across millions of years. They had seen the Valkyrin before they became an empire. They had seen what the Valkyrin did to become rulers of the galaxy. They had seen what the Valkyrin did to humanity 10,000 years ago. Humans were not a minor species. They were among the greatest civilizations in the galaxy. They had built magnificent ships. They had colonized hundreds of worlds. They had art and music and science that rivaled anyone else. They were known for their creativity, their courage, and their stubborn refusal to give up. The Valkyrin saw humanity as a threat, working in secret. The Valkyrin developed weapons using stolen architect technology they had found. They waited for the right moment. Then they struck without warning. In a single generation, the Valkyrin destroyed everything humans had built. They burned colony worlds. They shattered space stations. They killed billions. Those who survived were forced back to Earth, their technology destroyed, their history erased. The Valkyrin told the survivors that humans had always been primitive, that they had never achieved anything, that they should be grateful. The Valkyrin allowed them to live at all. The lie became truth because no one remained who remembered otherwise. When Dr. Yuna discovered this, she wept for the ancestors she never knew. She wept for the greatness that was stolen. She wept for all the generations of humans who believed they were nothing because they had been told they were nothing. Then she stopped crying and started working. The architect archives contained evidence. Recordings of the attacks, lists of destroyed human colonies, genetic records proving the mass killings. Everything needed to expose the Valkyrin's crimes was preserved in perfect detail, but that was not all. The architects had also left behind their technology, shields that could absorb any weapon, engines that could cross the galaxy in weeks instead of years, medical devices that could cure any disease, and most importantly, a beacon. The beacon was connected to a network of architect defense systems scattered across the galaxy. These systems had been dormant for millions of years, waiting for someone worthy to wake them up. Why would they leave all this behind? Minho asked when Yuna explained her discoveries. Yuna showed him a final message from the architects. It was addressed to whoever found their legacy. We saw what was coming, the message said. We knew we could not stop it, but we could prepare for those who would come after. We leave our knowledge to whoever proves themselves worthy. Use it wisely. Use it to protect the innocent. Use it to restore what was stolen. Taiho gathered the crew. They had been in the silence for 15 years by then. Some had died from accidents or illness. Others had been born, including a baby boy named Jiho, whose parents taught him to dream of Earth, even though he had never seen it. The crew had become a family bound by hardship and hope. We have a choice, Taiho told them. We can try to find a way home and live quietly with what we know, or we can bring this truth back with us and change everything. Every single crew member chose to fight. For the next 25 years, they prepared. They learned to use architect technology. They upgraded the Eternal Dawn, until it was unlike any ship in the known galaxy. They studied the beacon and understood how to activate it when the time came. They also searched for a way home. Hannah discovered that the rift was not random. It could be opened again from this side using architect technology. The path home had been waiting for them all along. Finally, they were ready. On the day they left the Silence, Captain Taiho stood on the bridge and looked at his crew. They had aged. Many had gray hair now. They had spent most of their lives in this graveyard of civilizations, but they had not wasted a single day. "What we carry will change the galaxy," Taiho said. "The Valkyrin will try to stop us. They will lie, threaten, and kill to keep their secrets buried. But we have truth on our side, and the truth cannot be stopped forever." Dr. Yuna held the data crystal containing everything. All the evidence, all the history, all the proof of what humanity once was and what was stolen from them. Young Jiho sat at navigation, ready to guide them through the rift. He had never seen a sky. He had never felt wind on his face. But he had been raised on stories of Earth, and he believed in them with all his heart. Hannah fired up the engines. They roared with power, both human and ancient. The rift opened before them, a doorway back to the galaxy they had left 4 decades ago. Beyond it was danger. Beyond it was war. Beyond it was a confrontation with the most powerful empire in existence. Beyond it was home. "We are not just going back," Taiho said as the ship moved forward. "We are going back with the truth. And when the galaxy learns what the Valkyrin did, nothing will ever be the same." The eternal dawn flew into the rift. 40 years of preparation was about to pay off. The lost human ship was returning, and it carried secrets that would crush an empire. High Overlord Raxes sat upon his throne in the heart of the Valkyrin. Homeworld. He was ancient even by his species standards. His gray skin stretched tight over sharp bones, his black eyes holding the cold intelligence of a predator. He had ruled the empire for 200 years. He had crushed rebellions, conquered worlds, and silenced anyone who threatened Valkyrin dominance. Now, for the first time in his long reign, he felt something close to fear. "Explain to me," Raxes said quietly, "how one human ship disabled 3 of my warships." Admiral Korveth stood before the throne, his posture rigid with tension. He was the Empire's greatest military commander, responsible for maintaining order across 1,000 worlds. Today, he had no answers that would satisfy his master. "The ship used technology we have never encountered," Korveth reported. "Our weapons had no effect on their shields. Their countermeasure disabled all 3 vessels simultaneously without causing structural damage. It was precise, surgical. We have no record of anything similar." Raxes leaned forward. "Where did humans acquire such technology?" "We do not know, High Overlord. The ship was missing for 40 years. We're investigating where they might have traveled." "I do not want investigations." Raxes' voice dropped to a whisper that was more frightening than any shout. "I want that ship destroyed. I want everyone aboard killed. I want whatever they carry erased from existence." Korvath hesitated. "High Overlord, with respect, we do not know what they carry. Perhaps we should attempt to capture the ship intact and learn where this technology came from." Raxes rose from his throne. He was tall, even for a Valkyrin, and his presence filled the room with menace. "I know what they carry. I know where they have been. There is only one place in the galaxy where such technology exists, a place we believed was lost forever." The Admiral waited. "They found the Architect Archives," Raxes said. "They found the truth." Korveth felt cold spread through his body. Like all Valkyrin, he had been taught that the Empire rose to power through superior strength and intelligence. He had believed it his entire life, but he had also heard whispers. Old stories passed down through generations of nobility. Stories about how the Valkyrin really built their empire. "Send everything we have," Raxes commanded. "Every ship in the sector. Intercept them at the Kasari Nebula. They must not reach human space. They must not share what they know." 20 hours later, Captain Taiho stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dawn and watched 60 Valkyrin warships emerge from hyperspace. They formed a wall of metal and weapons between his ship and Earth. "That is a lot of ships," Minho observed. His hand rested on the weapons console, ready to fight. Taiho nodded slowly. He had expected resistance. He had not expected the Empire to send an entire fleet. Whatever they carried must frighten the Valkyrin more than he realized. "Hannah, how are our shields?" Taiho asked through the intercom. Her voice came back steady and sure. "Full power, Captain. These old bones can take a beating." Dr. Yuna stood beside Taiho, the data crystal safe in her pocket. "They know," she said quietly. "They know what we found. That is why they sent so many. Then we give them a fight they will never forget." Taiho turned to his crew. "All hands? Battle stations?" Jiho plot an escape course through the nebula. "Minho, weapons free, but try to minimize casualties. We are not murderers. And if they board us?" Minho asked. Taiho's eyes hardened. "They will not board us." The Valkyrin fleet opened fire. Light filled the viewport as hundreds of weapons discharged at once. The Eternal Dawn's shields flared bright blue, absorbing the attack. Inside the ship, the crew felt nothing but a gentle vibration. Architect technology held firm, but 60 ships carried a lot of weapons. And even the strongest shield had limits. "Shield power dropping," Yuna reported. 92%? 89? Minho returned fire. Blue pulses of energy struck the nearest Valkyrin ships, disabling their systems. 5 ships went dark. Then 10, then 15. But more kept coming. "They're trying to surround us," Jiho called out. His fingers flew across navigation controls. "I can get us into the nebula, but the path is dangerous. Unstable energy pockets. One wrong move, and we are dust." "Do it," Taiho ordered. The Eternal Dawn dove toward the Khazari Nebula. The Valkyrin fleet followed, still firing. Inside the swirling clouds of gas and energy, sensors became unreliable. Ships moved like shadows, appearing and disappearing in the chaos. Jiho navigated by instinct. He had grown up studying star charts and navigation theory. He had practiced in simulations for years. Now he used everything he knew to guide the ship through a maze that would have killed any other pilot. But the Valkyrin were relentless. A missile slipped through the shields and struck the hull. The ship shuddered. Alarms screamed. Smoke filled a corridor on Deck 3. "Hull breach in Section 7, someone reported. "Emergency bulkheads holding." Another impact. Then another. The shields were failing. In the engine room, Hannah worked with desperate speed. She had kept this ship alive for 40 years. She had rebuilt engines with nothing but scrap metal and willpower. She had nursed every system through breakdowns that should have been fatal. Now, the reactor was failing. "Captain," Hannah's voice came through the intercom. "We have a problem. The reactor took damage. If I cannot stabilize it in the next 5 minutes, we lose main power." Taiho felt his heart freeze. Without power, they were dead. The Valkyrin would capture them. The truth would be buried forever. "What do you need?" Taiho asked. "Someone has to manually adjust the containment field from inside the reactor chamber. The radiation is too high for remote repair." Silence filled the bridge. Everyone understood what Hannah was saying. Anyone who entered the reactor chamber would not survive. "I will do it," Hannah said. Her voice was calm, peaceful even. "I always knew this old girl would need one more sacrifice." "Let it be mine." "Hannah, no." Taiho's voice cracked. "We will find another way." "There is no other way, and there is no time." Hannah laughed softly. "I have had a good life, Taiho. 40 years of adventure. 40 years with a family I love? Let me give you 40 more." Before anyone could argue, she ended the communication. In the engine room, Hannah sealed the doors behind her. She walked toward the reactor chamber, her tools in hand. Radiation warnings flashed red. Every alarm begged her to turn back. She did not turn back. Inside the chamber, the heat was unbearable. Her skin began to burn within seconds, but her hands remained steady as she worked. 40 years of experience guided every movement. She adjusted the containment field, rerouted power, stabilized the reaction. The reactor steadied. Power surged back through the ship. On the bridge, Taiho watched the power levels return to full strength. He also watched Hannah's life signs fade to nothing. "She did it," Minho said quietly. There were tears in his eyes. "She saved us." Taiho stood frozen for a long moment. Then he straightened his spine and looked at his crew. "Then we will not waste her sacrifice. Jiho, get us out of this nebula now." The Eternal Dawn shot forward with renewed power. Architect shields flared back to full strength. Valkyrian ships tried to follow, but Jiho found a path through the nebula's heart where no sane pilot would fly. Energy storms raged around them. Sensors went blind. For terrible minutes, they flew through chaos guided only by a young man's instinct and faith. Then they burst out the other side. The Valkyrian fleet was behind them, trapped in the nebula's interference. By the time they navigated through, the Eternal Dawn would be long gone. Taiho walked to the communication station. "Send a compressed data burst toward Earth. Include the summary of what we found. If anything happens to us, the truth must survive." The message flew into space, carrying the beginning of the end for the Valkyrian Empire. That night, the crew gathered in the mess hall to honor Hannah. There was no body to bury. The radiation had taken everything, but they shared stories about her. How she talked to the engines like they were children, how she never gave up on anything broken, how she always found a way, how she died for what we carry, Taiho said finally. She died so the truth could live. We will honor her by finishing what we started. 48 hours to Earth. The final distance felt like forever. The data burst reached Earth 6 hours before the Eternal Dawn arrived. At first, the humans who received it did not believe what they were reading. The information was too shocking. The claims were too massive. Surely this was some kind of trick or mistake. Then they verified the source codes. They confirmed the transmission came from a ship that had been missing for 40 years. They began to examine the evidence with growing horror. In the great halls of the United Earth government, leaders gathered to discuss what they had received. Some wanted to dismiss it as propaganda. Others demanded immediate investigation. Arguments raged through the night. Then the Eternal Dawn appeared in Earth's sky. It was not a quiet arrival. Every sensor on the planet detected the ship. News broadcasts interrupted their programming to show images of the ancient vessel descending through the atmosphere. Billions of humans looked up and saw something impossible. Their lost explorers had come. Home Captain Taiho's first transmission was simple. "People of Earth, my name is Captain Taiho of the exploration vessel Eternal Dawn. We left 40 years ago. We have returned with the truth about who we are and what was stolen from us. Request permission to land." Permission was granted immediately. The ship touched down outside the United Earth government headquarters. Thousands of people had gathered despite short notice. Security forces formed a perimeter, unsure if they should be protecting the ship or protecting against it. Everyone was asking the same questions. Where had they been? What had they found? What truth were they talking about? The ramp lowered. Captain Taiho walked down first, followed by Dr. Yuna, Lieutenant Minho, Navigator Jiho, and the remaining crew. They were old. They were tired. But they walked with the dignity of people who had completed the impossible. Taiho stopped at the bottom of the ramp and looked around. He had not seen Earth in 40 years. The air smelled different than he remembered. The sky looked bluer. For a moment, emotion overwhelmed him, and he could not speak. Jiho stood beside him, looking at everything with wonder. He had seen images of Earth his entire life. He had dreamed of this moment since he was a child. Now he was finally here, and it was more beautiful than any dream. Is this really Earth? Jiho whispered. Taiho smiled despite his tears. Yes, son. This is home. The president of the United Earth government approached them. She was a dignified woman named President Soman, elected 3 years ago with a promise to fight for humanity's place in the galaxy. She had already read the data burst. She knew what these people carried, but she needed to hear it from them directly. Captain Taiho, she said formally, on behalf of Earth and all humanity, Welcome home. We have many questions, and we have many answers, Taiho replied. But they should be heard by everyone. Not just Earth, the entire galaxy needs to know what we found. Within hours, Dr. Yuna stood before a camera that would broadcast to every corner of human space. Beyond that, the transmission would spread through communication networks to other species. The Valkyrin could not block it. The truth was about to escape. My name is Dr. Yuna, she began. Her voice was steady, even though her heart raced. 40 years ago, I left Earth as a young scientist seeking knowledge. Today, I return with knowledge that will change everything you believe about yourselves and the galaxy. She held up the data crystal. This contains the archives of a species called the Architects. They existed millions of years before any current civilization. They watched the rise and fall of countless peoples. They recorded everything they observed, including the true history of humanity. Images appeared on screens across the galaxy, ancient recordings from architect databases. Ships that were unmistakably human, but far more advanced than anything currently existing. Cities on worlds that had been burned to ash. Technology that rivaled the best of any species. 10,000 years ago, Yuna continued, humanity was not a minor species. We were among the greatest civilizations in the galaxy. We built wonders. We explored the stars. We were known for our creativity, our resilience, and our courage. The images changed. Now they showed Valkyrin war fleets moving through space, weapons firing on defenseless human colonies, cities burning, people dying by the billions. The Valkyrin saw us as a threat. Using technology they stole from architect ruins, they destroyed everything we had built. They killed most of our people. They burned our history. They forced the survivors back to Earth and erased all memory of what we once were. Yuna's voice grew harder. Then they told us we were nothing. They told us we had always been primitive. They told us we should be grateful to serve them. And we believed the lie because there was no one left who remembered the truth. Across the galaxy, humans watched in silence. Many were crying. Others were shaking with rage. The weight of what had been stolen from them was too massive to comprehend all at once. Here is the evidence, Yuna said. Coordinates of destroyed human colony worlds. Genetic records proving mass genocide. Recordings of Valkyrian commanders ordering the executions. Everything needed to prove what I am saying is true. The data streamed out. Coordinates, names, dates, evidence that could not be denied or explained. Away on the Valkyrian homeworld. High Overlord Raxes watched the broadcast with growing fury. His advisors scrambled to respond, to deny, to craft some story that would explain away the accusations. But the evidence was too complete. The architect recordings were too detailed. Every lie they tried to tell crumbled against the weight of truth. Shut down the transmissions, Raxes commanded. Block them. Jam them. We cannot, High Overlord, an advisor said nervously. The humans are using architect communication technology. It bypasses all our interference. Raxes slammed his fist against his throne. 10,000 years of carefully maintained lies were falling apart in a single day. But the humans were not finished. On Earth, Captain Taiho took over the broadcast. He looked directly into the camera as if speaking to every person in the galaxy individually. What the Valkyrin did to humanity, they did to others as well. Check your own histories. How many species were told they were primitive? How many were told they should be grateful to serve? How many lost their past and never knew it? Across dozens of worlds, other species began examining their own records. They began asking questions that had been forbidden for generations. They began to realize that maybe, just maybe, they were not as weak and worthless as they had been told. High Overlord Raxes knew he was losing control. He summoned Admiral Korvath. Send a fleet to Earth, Raxes ordered. Destroy that ship. Kill those humans. Burn their planet if necessary. This ends now. But Korvath hesitated. He had watched the broadcast. He had seen the evidence. For the first time in his long career, he was not certain his empire deserved his loyalty. High Overlord, Korvath said slowly, if we attack Earth now, we prove everything they said about us. We prove we are murderers who destroy anyone who threatens our power. I do not care what we prove, Raxes hissed. I care about maintaining order. I care about preserving what our ancestors built on genocide and lies. The words hung in the air between them. Corveth had never spoken against his ruler before, but something had changed in him. The truth had a weight that could not be ignored. On Earth, Dr. Yuna held the architect beacon in her hands. It was small, no larger than a human fist, but it was connected to defense systems scattered across hundreds of worlds. Systems that had slept for millions of years. There is one more thing, she said. The architects left behind more than records. They left protection for those who came after. A way to stop tyrants from ever again committing the crimes the Valkyrin committed. She activated the beacon. Across the galaxy, ancient machines began to wake. Satellites that had floated dead in orbit for eons powered on. Dormant facilities on forgotten moons hummed to life. A network designed to protect the innocent stirred from its long sleep. The balance of power in the galaxy was about to change forever. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. On hundreds of worlds, ancient architect systems activated simultaneously. Massive shields surrounded planets that had lived in fear of Valkyrin aggression. Automated defense platforms positioned themselves around colonies that had been threatened for generations. Warning signals broadcast in every known language. Declaring that these worlds were now under protection, the Valkyrin military tested these defenses immediately. On the colony world of Visser 4, a Valkyrin warship fired on the newly activated shield. The weapon struck an invisible barrier and vanished completely. The shield did not even flicker. It absorbed our entire discharge, the ship's commander reported to headquarters. No effect whatsoever. We cannot penetrate these defenses. Similar reports came from across the Empire. Every attempt to attack a protected world failed completely. The Valkyrin military, feared throughout the galaxy for 10,000 years, was suddenly powerless. High Overlord Raxes refused to accept defeat. If he could not attack the protected worlds, he would destroy the source. He ordered his remaining loyal forces to converge on Earth and annihilate the humans who had started this catastrophe, but Admiral Corveth had made his choice. Officers and soldiers of the Valkyrin fleet, Corvath broadcast to all military channels. I have served this empire for 60 years. I believed we were bringing order to chaos. I believed we were helping lesser species reach their potential. I was wrong. The Admiral's face appeared on screens across the military network. His expression was heavy with shame and determination. The evidence is clear. Our ancestors did not build this empire through strength and wisdom. They built it through genocide and lies. They destroyed civilizations. They murdered billions. They erased histories. Everything we were taught about ourselves was false. On his flagship, Raxes watched the broadcast with cold fury. Corveth was betraying everything. He was destroying thousands of years of carefully maintained order. I cannot change what our ancestors did, Corveth continued, but I can refuse to continue their crimes. Any officer or soldier who wishes to join me in demanding accountability may do so. The rest of you must ask yourselves what kind of people you want to be. The fleet fractured. Ships that had served together for decades turned against each other as crews chose sides. Some remained loyal to Raxes, others joined Corvath. Many simply withdrew, refusing to participate in what was coming. On worlds throughout the Empire, civilian populations took to the streets. The truth had spread everywhere. People who had believed Valkyrin propaganda their entire lives now demanded answers. Colonial governments that had served the Empire for generations declared independence. Trade networks collapsed. Communication channels overflowed with anger and confusion. The Empire was falling apart from within. High Overlord Raxes made his final decision. If he could not preserve the Empire, he would ensure no one else benefited from its destruction. Deep beneath the capital city of the Valkyrin homeworld, engineers prepared the Devastator. It was the Empire's most secret weapon, designed centuries ago, but never used. A single device capable of destroying an entire planet, Raxes intended to use it on Earth. If humanity wants to tear down everything we built, Raxes said to his remaining loyalists, then humanity will not live to see what comes after. Load the Devastator. Target Earth. We end this where it began. The weapon launched. A ship carrying enough destructive power to crack a planet in half raced toward human space. Raxes watched it go with bitter satisfaction. Even if he fell, humanity would fall with him. But the architects had planned for tyrants like Raxes. The Devastator crossed into space protected by the ancient defense network. Instantly, 100 automated platforms converged on it. Energy beams of impossible precision struck the weapon ship from every angle. They did not destroy it violently. They simply dismantled it, piece by piece, with surgical accuracy. Within minutes, the Devastator was reduced to harmless fragments drifting in the void. On Earth, sensors detected what had happened. Captain Taiho watched the data with quiet awe. They tried to destroy us, Minho observed. Even now, they tried. Oh, they failed, Taiho replied. They will always fail now. The galaxy has changed. The final confrontation was almost anticlimactic. With his fleet divided and his ultimate weapon neutralized, High Overlord Raxes found himself alone in his throne room. His advisors had fled. His guards had abandoned their posts. The palace that had been the center of galactic power for 10,000 years was empty and silent. When Korvath's forces arrived to arrest him, Raxes did not resist. He sat on his throne and stared at the admiral who had betrayed him. I've destroyed everything, Raxes said. 10,000 years of order, of stability, of peace. It was never peace, Korvath replied. It was obedience enforced by fear and lies. That is not the same thing. And what will replace it? Chaos. War between species who were never meant to rule themselves. Freedom, Korvath said. For the first time in 10,000 years, every species in this galaxy will have the chance to build their own future. Some will succeed. Some will fail. But they will do it as free peoples, not slaves who forgot they were ever anything else.